Hi, I'm Mike Maloney, and welcome to another CSRM podcast. Today's episode is hosted by Dr. Greg Linville.
Well, hello, friends. We're back for another CSRM podcast. My name is Dan Stoffer, and once again, I am joined by Scott Stedman and Dr. Greg Linville as we are wrapping up the book, Putting the Church Back in the Game, and we're going to go right into chapter 10 and kind of talk about next steps. I think this is a great lead-in to other books within our series, and we're going to kind of summarize some of the things that we've covered here and how it's something that can really carry over to even some other parachurch organizations, as well as our churches, and very specifically for people who have sports ministries within the local church. So, Dr. Greg Linville, first of all, welcome. And if you would kind of lead us in to chapter 10 and where you want to kind of see us end from this book and then begin in other books within this series.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Scott. And any good sermon has 3 points. The first one is to study the scripture. The second one is to declare the doctrine. The third one is to apply the principles. And so now let's apply what we've learned through these first 9 chapters. And I'm going to ask questions. If you're in a local church, the question I have for you, can it be said about your church that you have effectively reached those far from Jesus and your church? And that today, those new converts would be considered dedicated disciples that are growing daily. So, is your congregation growing spiritually, but also numerically? To those sports-related para-ministries, I ask the same kind of question. Is your ministry effectively producing dedicated disciples, who, including being active members of a local congregation? And to the overall community, the sports outreach community asks, is the church worldwide growing? Is it growing spiritually and numerically in your country, in your region, because of what you're doing, because of your mission group? Most people are saying, no, that is not happening. So then, the end result of this purpose of our church that we've talked about in earlier segments is disciples. That's what we're supposed to be doing. So then, if we're supposed to go and make disciples, that's what the purpose of the church is. What does ecclesiology then mean for the local church? And again, a lot of our sports ministers say, oh, well, I don't get this because I am the church. I'm doing it. And yet, the mission of sports ministry, are you really reaching those people who are far from Jesus? And I just have to ask the churches that have multi-million-dollar facilities and those that have no facility at all, are you actually going? Or are you receiving? Are you just getting what people come through the door? How are you actively going to make disciples? I think the church, the local congregations, do a better job of maybe discipling people once they have a faith and they're in your church, but actually reaching that person that, they're out there in their language and their lifestyle and their dress and everything that they're involved in. You're not making any way for them to come in. That's a huge question for the local church. For the para-ministry, again, this is the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, the Athletes in Action. And these are our brothers and sisters. Please hear me if you're in that persuasion. We love each one of you. We love what your intentions are. But I have to ask the question is, are the people that are really becoming dedicated disciples the only ones that really are the ones that join your ministry staff? I think you need to have an honest look at how many people you touched and how many today are dedicated disciples of Jesus. And I would be willing to bet that if they are, it's because they've gotten plugged into a local church. And so for what this means is that you as a para-ministry leader, you need to make a personal commitment to personally be involved in a local church, that you're there every Lord's Day morning, every Lord's Day evening. You're there for the Bible studies. You're teaching classes. You're actively involved, and you are bringing the people that you're reaching through your para-ministry to that congregation. So that's the question and relevancy for the para-ministry. What does it mean for the overall sports outreach community? I think we've got to answer our question about, are we, and this goes back to the para-ministry world too, are we just having a platform proclamation, meaning we just have a gifted athlete or highly regarded coach get up and verbally speak the gospel? If that platform proclamation is all we're doing, then I'm questioning whether we're ever really getting people to become disciples. It's not enough to court converts, so to speak, but we need to go and make disciples. Conversion is obviously very important, but if that's where it ends for us within the sports outreach community, yeah, we had so many people raise their hand today, but we didn't get them in the church. I just think that's something that we really need to wrestle with all the way around. And part of this chapter talks about this concept about the great patriarch, and I can't think of who it is right now off the top of my head. Dan or Scott, you might be able to help me there, but they said that unless the church is our mother, God is not our father. And this is something that I think that we need to really, really take heart in. Anybody help me with who said that? Anyway,
The Bishop of Carthage.
Okay, there you go.
In 2nd century.
Cyprian was that guy. You spurred my thinking there. And the statement is further emphasized and strengthened and deepened by John Calvin. And there's a quote in a book that I don't have time to read through, but you can get the book. But in essence, he's saying the basic same thing. And these great church leaders are helping us understand that we've got to get back to the basics of not just calling people into this, yeah, I like Jesus today, evangelism, but it's evangelistic disciple making that we're after. That there then gives us a segue into where we're going from here. Let me just kind of summarize very quickly this book series. The book series has a theological foundation of theological truths. Then there's the philosophical principles of how do we organize, and then the methodological models of what does that look like? How do we go do it? So this book on ecclesiology is the first of 4 books that talk about these foundational theological foundations. And now you can see that it leads immediately to soteriology, which means what does it mean to be saved? Are we courting converts, or are we really going out and making disciples? And so that's where we go in the next book. And the book that follows that then is, if we're committed to really making the disciples, what is our missiology? What is our theology of mission? And then that comes to the 4th book, and that is Christology, the Christ of sports outreach, and why that is the central part of this whole thing. And so in this book series, we're trying to give the sports outreach community the theological foundations from which to go out and do their ministry. So Dan, there you have it.
And I think that's a great preview into the future series. And books that we have as a part of this series. And we just want to encourage you, please go online to csrm.org, go to our store, buy Putting the Church Back in the Game and some of the other books that go along with this as we continue on in our conversations about these through different podcasts and things like this. But I think that the challenge that you just offered up, of getting back to the basics of why we do what we do, that's why CSRM is here. We want to come alongside churches. We want to help the sports minister to make sure that discipleship is happening. Evangelistic disciple making is what we're all about. It's the whole thing. It's both and whatever we can do to help you through consultation, coaching, help you get a roundtable of other like-minded sports ministers in your area, just to kind of share resources, just to meet together, fellowship. We want to help you with that. And so that's why we exist as a ministry, is to help make sure that local churches are strengthened, because we are equipping and influencing those local church sports pastors. And if we can help you in any way, please reach out. You can reach out to any of us on this podcast here, myself, Scott, or Greg, through our website, or anybody else there as well. We are here as a resource to help you to take your next step, to make sure that discipleship is happening within your local church. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's podcast, and we have really enjoyed going through this book with you all. Again, buy one, buy a couple, have a conversation with your church leadership, have a conversation with those within your ministry, equip them and challenge them to make sure that the local church, your local church, is strengthened through your sports rec and fitness ministry. We'll see you next time as we continue on with the CSRM podcast. Take care.
The CSRM podcast is a production of CSRM and their production house, Overwhelming Victory. Dr. Greg Linville is the executive producer, and Scott Stedman is the associate producer and editor. To learn more about CSRM, visit csrm.org. For more information about Overwhelming Victory, visit overwhelmingvictory.org. The CSRM podcast is the flagship member of the podcast network Overwhelming Victory Radio. For more information on Overwhelming Victory Radio, or to listen to our partner podcasts, visit overwhelmingvictory.org/OV Radio. For CSRM Podcasts, I'm Mike Maloney. Have a blessed day.